It's loading right now, preparing to live stream. Okay.
So we're streaming now. So for those of you that might be watching, we're just waiting to get a quorum, and then we will begin the meeting.
And Joe, if you give me back the host, please.
Working on it, Tom. Give me a sec.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Has Alma been able to reach the president?
I don't know.
Yes, I've been asked to resend her login information.
So was it sent back to, she just texted me, Ms. Noble did, that she needs the Zoom link. It's being resent. It's an email, right, from Santa Fe Public Schools?
It's an email. I'll have to check to see if
It's from Santa Fe Public Schools. I just pulled it.
Okay. I've already sent it, by the way.
So, but it would have come, yeah.
And it went to her personal account.
Yeah. She's clicking everything. She says it's not working.
Dr. Garcia, did you get the email?
I don't know. I'm going to call her right now.
Okay.
Let me just mute.
There she is.
Hello, can you hear me, see me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. I really could not find the correct link.
It happens.
So we have Dr. Gonzalez. Do we have
We have Vice President Price.
Vice President Price is on the phone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I am.
Marvelous. Okay, and Sarah has texted me. She should be joining shortly. So I'm going to see if I have an agenda, but I guess we can call the meeting to order, and we don't have Secretary Garcia, I'm guessing.
Correct.
Okay, has anybody texted him?
Yes, and I asked Alma to check in with folks in advance, and we haven't heard back.
Okay.
And the agenda, can you put it back on, Alma, or
Find
Um,
it somewhere.
I have
Sorry.
way
Sure
Ms.
it's
Noble
in the-
can just see it on the screen?
Mm,
It goes up on the screen. There it is. You go to the next slide. There we go. Call to order.
Yep, just pulling it up because I need to be able to see ahead. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order and do the salute, do the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the New Mexico flag in English and in Spanish. Anybody want to do the pledge? I do. Okay. I'll go. I got an affirmative from behind me. There's a 9-year-old ready to lead us in the pledge.
Very good.
You'd have to do it on the microphone over here if you're going to do it. Okay, we'll just go ahead. He's getting a snack. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There we go. And in Spanish, juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. Anybody want to lead on the salute to the New Mexico flag? Okay. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Saludo la bandera del Estado de Nuevo México, el símbolo Zia de amistad perfecta entre culturas unidas. And the acknowledgement of tribal land. We acknowledge the original people of the land, the Tesuque Pueblo people and other tribal nations, and ask them to walk with us today as we share and learn together. Thank you very much. Okay, we are on to opening activities and approval of the agenda. Any changes? And if not, could I have a motion?
I move to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez.
I second. I
Thank you,
second.
Vice President Price. We have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. The president votes yes. Vice President Price,
Yes.
Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
Okay, we have an approved agenda. Now it's time to go into executive session to note collective, to discuss collective bargaining. Does one of you want to make a motion to take us into executive session? According to the statutes listed on the agenda?
Where is that?
On the screen, Dr. Gonzalez.
Yeah, I got it. I move to move into executive session according to the collective, according to NMSA 1978, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, and I'll second that. And we're going in according to, as it's noted on the agenda. We'll start with we'll have a roll call vote. Dr. Gonzalez, how about you first this time?
Yes.
Vice President Price?
yes,
And the president votes yes. We will be in executive session, coming back to the regular session in the neighborhood of 4 o'clock. So now technically we move over to the other link.
Right, before we go away, Dr. Ryan, can you see if you guys can help him on? He's having trouble with the camera on his borrowed laptop.
I'll take
Thank
care of
you.
it.
All right, see you all in the other place. Thank you.
Do you hear me there?
Yes. Hello, Vice President Price. Hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
All right. I'm telling him you're going to eat, but I want you to go outside if you're going to restart at 4:30.
Right now.
You could get dressed. Sweetheart, I've got it.
Mr. Martinez, did you get that correction to Ms. Behar?
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we've got Carmen, Sarah. We confirmed Vice President Price earlier. I'm here. We're hoping Rudy gets on.
Are those lilacs in the background?
Oh, yes, I forgot that that's my picture.
Oh, I thought maybe you were in your backyard and those were beautiful lilacs.
It's actually past lilac season, even in Santa
Yeah,
Fe.
that's
I know
true.
you wouldn't know that down in the tropics, but you know.
Out in the tropics. It doesn't feel like the tropics today.
Down
It's
in the tropics. 2,000 feet.
Wasn't much of a season this year.
my house is really cold. There's these big gigantic trees that cast a lot of shade on the house and it just gets really cold.
Okay, well, I guess we might as well come back. It's 4 o'clock and still hoping that Secretary Garcia will be joining us. But here we go. And coming back, oh, should I ask if we're broadcasting? We need to do that, right?
It says we're live.
It does say we're live on YouTube. Okay. Dr. Gonzalez, do you want to bring us back?
Sure. I'd like to move that we come out of executive session where we discussed collective bargaining is listed on the agenda and there was no action taken.
This is Sarah. I will second that.
Great, thank you very much. And we'll do a roll call vote. Vice President Price,
Yes.
Secretary Garcia? No. Dr. Gonzalez
Yes?
and Board Member Bose.
Yes.
And the president votes yes. So we are back from executive session. Thank you very much. Okay, we're on to the introduction of the interpreter, Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. For this evening, our interpreter will be Dr. James Lujan. Para los ustedes que están cuidando, escuchando, que necesitan un intérprete, el Dr. James Lujan está disponible para interpretar esta tarde. Pueden llamar a 701-802-5152. El número de acceso 4277-932. Gracias.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, moving on. What's next on the agenda? In all of the clicking for links, I lost my.
Public forum.
Okay, public forum. On to public forum. Has anybody signed up for public forum? Dr. Garcia or is David?
Yes,
Oh.
thank you. David Carl, are anybody sign up for public forum this evening?
Board President Noble, Superintendent Garcia, members of the board, nobody signed up for public forum this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Carl.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving swiftly along to the next item on the agenda, the meeting of the Finance Subcommittee. We are going to go through, usually these are the pillars of the presentation as we review our budget, potential budget for the new fiscal year 2021. Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. As going to get the presentation up, we've had technical difficulties all afternoon, and I don't know for sure who is going to be sharing their screen. Is that going to be you, Robert, or is that going to be Hedman?
I believe everyone's going to be able to do it now, correct, Edmond? Or I could do it if needed.
Yeah, Dr. Garcia, Board President Noble, we're fixing it in the slides right now, and it will come up in just a second.
So as while we're waiting, as Board President Noble mentioned, the overview tonight, we will be reviewing budget balancing options from May 14th, but we're doing it a little bit differently to make it easier, because otherwise you were going to have to toggle between two slides. We will have one large slide that will have the balancing options from May 14th next to a column of what we're proposing, or actually the other way around, what we're proposing and what was proposed last time we met, so that you can see the differences all in one slide. You'll also be seeing what is being recommended that we budget for the Cares Act. And then you will see all of that on one slide. And then the operating budget, if you recall, includes more than just the operational budget. And so we will be going over all of those different sections of the operating budget, which many of those will have grants in them that we have not received yet. So we just roll over the number from last year for budgeting purposes. Many of those are entitlements and whatnot. This year, you're going to see an impact to SB 9 and HB 33 because of COVID planning and preparation, and Deputy Superintendent Wagner will speak to that. We'll do a roll-up of the entire proposed operating budget. And if it's okay, if you can write your questions as they pertain to slides, unless you're asking a clarifying question, I think it'll make the presentation go a little smoother, because you'll have, it all just builds on itself. If that's okay. If not, we'll take questions. If you prefer, Madam President, what's your pleasure?
I think unless other members of the board want differently, let's hold our questions to the end. Is that all right? Sarah and Carmen are nodding. Vice President Price will speak up if she objects. And Secretary Garcia has not yet managed to get on.
Okay.
Okay.
Waiting for either our deputy CFO or our CFO to put the presentation up on the screen for me.
Yeah. I don't see Alma on, but it would also be great if somebody could call Secretary Garcia. I think he could use a little technical assistance.
I think she did, and he said he was joining now. He was at a commissioners meeting. I'll text her to call him.
I have a very strange text from him, which maybe he was trying to talk to text and it didn't get it all right.
I did resend the invitation.
Hello, how are you? Good, good.
Hey, Melissa, you're
That's
not
okay.
muted. Melissa,
Can you
Plus.
mute Ms. Lomax? Tom?
Sorry, I'm sorry. Yes.
I'm sure everybody heard me telling my child to get dressed just before we went.
All right, can we go ahead and go to the second slide, please? Right now, you're not in presentation mode, whoever's showing it. Did Tom get the updated version?
Yes, he has the updated version.
Okay. Okay, next slide. I've already discussed this. Next slide. Okay, so this is a complex page. We did our best to get it as, we wanted it on one slide because it's so much easier to understand, okay? And you can see that next there's a new third section, and that's the Cares Act allocation, okay? All of these numbers are in millions as they were last time. What you will see two columns under each section that has what we're proposing and what was previously allocated when we presented to you on the 14th. What is highlighted in yellow are the changes. So can you all see the screen? I'm hoping you can see the screen. So I know if Ms. Price is, can you see it? Okay, and I'm going to go over it all because Ms. Price and some people might be listening by phone. So
Yes.
we started with the deficits last time, and we presented 3.9 million as we looked at changes for level, there were some level changes that have been left out, national board certification, and also filling out the requests of the board as we have discussed negotiations and whatnot. That new amount for salaries, once we addressed it, is now $4.4 million. Okay, the increase. Hold on a second. And then on the mandatory benefits, that is 1.54 million. It was 1.4 million. And Secretary Garcia has joined us, so it looks like we have a full board. Welcome, Secretary.
Yes, welcome, Secretary Garcia. This is the first slide of the presentation, and we're very glad you're here.
Thank you.
Yay, glad you're here. And the board benefits that the board has talked about of paying those increases increased by $7,000 compared to what was presented to you earlier. And so the decrease in E-rate stayed the same. So the total deficit now is $7,007,000. And then we had to identify sources of revenue to be able to offset those costs. So we're not going over all the units as we did last time.
I appreciate the manager really getting to us before the last minute, but I would actually like to know.
Hey, Rudy, you got to mute.
Need a contract with, and I understand New Mexico State.
Okay, I wasn't sure if he was asking me a question.
No,
okay. All right. So the SC, I showed all the units and how all that fell out last time. I didn't think it was germane to do that over again this time. So the SCG increase overall, how all the units fell out was 2.6 million. That stayed the same. Don't go back. Thank you. The special ed decline in enrollment stays the same. Fine arts materials, the 40,000. But if you recall, it's got an asterisk. So we're picking that up in non-recurring costs. District FTEs, the last time we were looking at 8 FTE, that got bumped up to 9 for 950,000. However, if you note there, we will be picking up one position under the Cares Act, but it had to be cut out of operational. Contract services, we cut 1.9 million. Of that, some of the services that we thought would have most impact at schools or for at-risk students was picked up under the CARES Act. Professional development, the 600,000, we picked up a portion of that on the CARES Act. Those numbers all stayed the same. Professional development, math and science initiatives, recruit and retain, district supplies. But you will see that some of those also got picked up under the CARES Act. We added 2 additional things that were not there before, and that was attendance coaches. We cut 3 attendance coaches out of operational to balance, but picked it up under the CARES Act. And 2 instructional coaches that were picked, cost shifted to Title II, I believe. So you can see that the deficits in operational, we were able to close that gap by making cuts to operational. But that's not the rest of the story. So now we go to the next section. So as you recall, I identified other costs that we wanted to fund. The fine arts, non-recurring, we wanted to make that up. Instructional materials and textbooks, we wanted to make up that 600,000. The 145,000 in district supplies, we wanted to make that up, and we needed 350,000 for the GEO bond election costs for a total of 1.135 million. That stayed the same as when we presented to you last week. We identified revenue to address these issues. Land sales, 750,000, that stayed the same. What is different is that last time we met with you, we identified almost $1 million, 0.975 from the cash balance. We've been able to reduce that by 385,000 by shifting the professional development and the crossing guards to the CARES Act, which are legitimate expenses. The total needed from cash balance and land sales when we previously presented to you was a higher amount, 1.7 million. But because of the CARES Act, we've been able to reduce that to 1.1 million, ensuring that most of the charges to the CARES Act could potentially be non-recurring expenditures. So our estimated cash balance is the same as it was last time at 5.3 million. We had previously recommended pulling 0.975. We are now recommending pulling 385,000 from the cash balance. And so previously we had a lower cash balance of 4.3 million. Now we're projecting a cash balance of 4.9. Previously, it would have reduced the cash balance to 3.7%. Under this new scenario, the cash balance would be 4.2%, much closer to the board policy of a minimum of 5% and above the recommended 3% that the PED requires or would prefer. We were allocated 2.6 million from the CARES Act. The attendance coaches, we feel are a legitimate expense under the CARES Act, addressing the needs of at-risk students at 195,000. We reallocated an FTE that was cut to do more around parent engagement, ombudsman follow-up, and given what we'll be dealing with the pandemic, that made a lot of sense. So we funded that out of the CARES Act. Contract services, we were able to add back 254,000. Again, services that we felt impacted students directly or indirectly. Professional development, 400,000. That is allowable under the CARES Act. COVID-19 and the impact on the economy has greatly impacted the city of Santa Fe that's facing a multi-million-dollar deficit. So we went ahead and budgeted 190,000. That's the city portion of the crossing guards under the CARES Act. Nutrition services, I'd like Christy to just talk about this for a few minutes. Christy, if you don't mind, our deputy superintendent.
Board President, Board Members, Superintendent Garcia. President Noble, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Great. The student nutrition allocation is to begin to cover what we have projected to be an ongoing deficit in the student nutrition department. Currently, the amount of meals we're serving is a mismatch for the staff we're paying. We're not generating enough revenue. We're coming up almost $150,000 short a month, but paying salaries to nearly 100 employees. We're running a service requiring maybe 25 employees based on demand. And we're a little nervous about the new school year in that the delivery model for instruction may be some blended learning or some sort of alternate schedule or perhaps even a full-time schedule, but we're nervous about our meal counts. And if our revenue doesn't go up and we continue to retain all the employees that we currently have, we'll have a deficit. So this slight amount would cover us for only a few months, given that we've already incurred, I think, $300,000 in a deficit for that department. The utility projection is much the same. It's an increase in utilities, anticipating maybe our buildings will have to be open longer to serve all of our students in an in-person setting. If smaller groups of students have to come in person, would require more hours of the day. That's just sort of our assumption. I said that two different ways. Also assuming a split shift may have to go into effect, additional bus runs if students are brought to school at different hours of the day or in small groups. All of these three categories are all assuming that we have to anticipate some schedule other than a typical school day schedule. And so those are where those projections come from.
And the instructional coaches also will need to be addressed. I misspoke. I thought that those were coming out of Title II, but actually they're here. And so those are, again, legitimate uses of the CARES Act. But as you can see, we have that balanced in terms of what was allocated and what was expended. Now, again, as I've said many times, the budget is a plan, and we will have to adjust this plan based on data points and how all of this plays out, what we will need in the CARES Act. I keep pointing to my screen as though the audience knew what I was doing. As we look at what the demands will be if, in fact, we have to make accommodations for family or staff in a different way, we may have to make adjustments in the CARES Act allocation. Also, depending on what the legislature does during this special session, either in decreases or increases in revenue, we would go back and look at areas that we've cut and prioritize and add back, which could happen before July 1. Let's hope they're add backs and not more cuts. So we'll go to the next slide. The CARES Act's impacts, what we're allowed to use, and it's a laundry list, but basically anything relating to closing the digital divide, supporting social and emotional needs of students, families, and staff, supporting the needs of students with disabilities, providing for personal protective equipment, including costs for increased sanitization of facilities or any other related COVID-19 costs. But the list is quite exhaustive. It's also there to help you not have major staff cuts as well. And we did our best, as I said, to keep cuts away from the classroom. Let's go to the next slide. Noteworthy impacts of the operational budget is that There were FTE cuts, but we were able to cost shift when allowable. We meet the 4% average for all employee work groups, as well as direction from the board includes board contributions to employee and surety cost increases, the Cares Act. And let's go on to the next slide. The budget will have to be revisited. Let's go to the next slide. The budget will have to be revisited again after, no, not that one. Go back to the next one. They're proposed. So I don't know who's supposed to go over this portion.
I am. Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Garcia, this is a review of the proposed operating budget 2021. Our operating budget, as Dr. Garcia has described it before, describes the entire budget, which includes all of the funds that the district has the authority to utilize in the operation of the district, and includes operational, which is our main non-categorical funding mostly SEG, which now includes instructional materials, other local revenues such as leases, rentals, E-rate, and also includes cash balance. The operating budget is also inclusive of special revenue, such as transportation, nutrition services, federal, state, and local grants. It also includes our capital outlay, which is bond, mill levy, special legislative appropriations, which when we visited last time, we noted that those were frozen. We will revisit that later on, and it also includes the ETN. It also includes debt service, categorical funds that are used to pay principal and interest of the GO bond and ETN.
Thank you. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, go ahead, Edmond.
Thank you, Madam President, Noble, Board Member, Superintendent Dr. Garcia. We do have a long list of grants that the district receives, both through entitlement of the state and also entitlement through the federal government. So there are two slides that you'll see that have a listing of quite a few of the grants that we have. There are some grants that are sub-grants that we receive in partnership with the city or the county as well. For most of these grants, we've received some kind of allocation for the upcoming fiscal year, but those that are showing pending, we don't necessarily have an allocation award letter yet. Typically, we receive those either now through the end of June for any of the state grants, but sometimes we do receive them in the fall, so they may not necessarily be showing an allocation amount yet. If they're pending, we will update those to the board as a budget adjustment requests or as submissions to the final budget. So any of these that are currently showing pending, we do anticipate that we will receive an allocation amount for, but we just may not have received that specific allocation award letter yet. So most of these in this on this listing here are all state awarded allocations as either a direct grant or a sub-grant from the federal government. Next slide, please. And the other grants, you'll see that we have over 30 grants that the district receives, both state and federal. The total of these for this year were about 28 million. For next year, currently we have about 24 million. I believe on the previous slide it did show the allocation amount that we were receiving from the Cares Act, and then all of these that are continuing for the district, we will continue to budget them as they are made available for this next fiscal year. Some of these may have been one-time grants, such as the Community Schools Planning Grant, but now we are allocated an implementation grant for that specific grant itself. So some of these may have either 2 or 3 year cycles. And once we have fully expended all of those through the grant, we may not receive them in subsequent years. But currently we have about 24.7 million in grant allocations for the upcoming fiscal year. Next slide, please.
Go ahead, Robert.
I'm President, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Garcia. This is a look at our capital outlay. As you can see, our FY 2020 compared to FY 21 has remained consistent between our bond building, our ETN, mill levy, and our SB9 and HB 33. The only thing that has changed on this is the special capital outlay, which are those special appropriations that were frozen. So in the FY 21 or in the FY 21, we'll have a zero amount budgeted in there because they were frozen. So I'll state the same besides that, the special capital outlay.
Thank you. So as let's go to the next slide. As I mentioned earlier, that there could be impacts to SB9 and HB 33 that would impact our maintenance budgets because of COVID-19. Christy, you want to just go over this at a high level, please?
Board President, board members, Superintendent Garcia. We've been working pretty quickly to identify equipment and materials necessary for both employee, student safety, and for disinfecting and appropriate cleaning of the facilities under new CDC guidelines. We anticipate there may be more requirements, but we're trying to get ahead of those. And as you can see in the encumbered cost column under 1920, we've already encumbered $340,000 in purchases for the various items listed here. Additionally, we anticipate a need for an increased number of custodians to keep up with a more rigorous sanitization schedule. And we've projected that cost at almost $1.7 million for the upcoming school year.
Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Go ahead.
So in addition to what the district is required to cover for any of the amounts that the district receives through sales, the district is required to cover those bond issuances paid back through a debt service. And we manage those funds through these different accounts as far as the debt service accounts. That go directly to principal payments, interest payments, or issuance of any technical services that go with those sale of bonds. And then the district also maintains a reserve amount for any of those debt services collections. So these are collections that the district receives from the county. As those collections are made, we will pay off those bonds that are owed, and the district has the opportunity to maintain those bonds, that payment schedule based off of what were issued in the sale of the bond itself. And we have approximately 56 million that the district has in a regular debt service payment within a fiscal year.
Let's go on to the next slide.
Our overall budget for the district, we have different funding sources sectioned out between the operational, the special revenue, capital outlay, and the debt service. The total of these all would be approximately $260 million that the district operates, both including anything that the district has on a capital outlay, as well as any of those regular funds that are recurring for the district. So we have approximately 42 to 44% of our funds that are operational, which means that they go directly to any of those services for operational purposes, including any of the services directly for students in instruction, for maintaining the facilities, and any of those administrative costs that go towards the operational, as well as all of the other expenditures that are related to the district operations in its entirety. $260 million is the total operating budget that the district utilizes, but they are sectioned into different funding sources.
Let's go on to the next one.
So there are the next two slides that will provide you a roll-up of those budgets of the $260 million in specific line items. You can see how they're sectioned off as far as how those budgeted amounts go into either salaries or benefits, additional services, supplies and materials, or other related expenses. So these are the specific lines that the district utilizes as far as categories for the expenditures, and this is just the first half of the budget roll-up in terms of those categories. Next slide, please. So the other sections, this is a continuation of the previous slide that showed each of those line items that were paid towards either salaries, benefits, supplies. So the other items that are used for different functions, if you will, the total of these again is $260,634,234, but they go towards each of these different areas or different line items of the budget themselves. Next slide, please.
So again, if we look at the cash balance estimates and whatnot, those are estimates. Most likely it will be higher, hopefully, than lower, but again, it is an estimate, and it's a best guess based on last trends and encumbrances and whatnot. So I do want to make that point clear. Also, we have the special session on the 18th. I would hope that we would get direction, as soon as possible before the end of the fiscal year to make budget adjustments before July 1. We submit the budget to PED prior to that, this budget that you're seeing tonight on June 3rd. I hope that we can complete negotiations with the bargaining groups before June 16th, but that's ambitious. I know other years it has come later. Sometimes the contracts are not ratified until August. We will meet with the board on June 30th, if possible, to present BARs to the Board of Ed based on the special legislative session results and approval of the Cares Act. If need be, we might have to go into July, but I think it's possible that we could get it done by June 30th. I would hope, Herman, by then we'll also have a better sense of the cash balance, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So with that, we can now go back with the rest of the presentation. Some of the I know we didn't go through 24 slides, but if you can reference a slide number, we can go back to it, whatever is the pleasure of the board. But we have now presented the entire operating budget, and we recommend approval at this point.
Thank you very much. I don't know how many slides we actually have, but I know it looks way simpler than it's been, and there are burly spreadsheets behind even the reasonably complex spreadsheets in this presentation. So thank you to everybody for the hard work and long hours in this. It's very clear, and I appreciate that. Questions from the board? Why don't we go back to the first meaty spreadsheet with the highlights of what changed between last time and this time, if we could. Is that a drum roll? I mean, I know it's a dramatic moment when we look at our budget.
It should be. I think we're all just exhausted. Go all the way to the one, I think it's slide 2 or 3, Tom. I know that they're, okay, the one with the highlights. There you go.
Thank you. Well, I don't have any questions here. I don't know if anybody else from the board does, but this is,
This is the meat of everything right here.
This is the meat of it.
All on one page, which.
This is Carmen, President, Board President, Dr. Garcia. I really, really appreciate the layout of this. I think it was really easy to understand and your explanation was very good. So I don't really have any questions about it, but I do appreciate this format.
Thanks a little bit. Thank you. We tried to make it easy to understand the moving parts. This can be presented in a way that could be really complicated, but what does that accomplish?
Right.
Confusion is what it accomplishes. And I just want to be clear because it is something that I don't think should be taken for granted. And I appreciate that this board has been willing to carry out the policy of previous boards, but picking up the cost of the benefits contribution is what the board benefits employee, the sort of third one down from the left, that is correct, right? That's the benefits increase that the board
Correct.
has wanted to pick up rather than put on the backs of our staff or pull out of the paychecks of our staff rather. And, I think, again, it's great that this board is willing to continue the policy of previous boards even before I joined. But that's something that, we should call out, and it's good to be able to balance the budget while taking care of staff members with those costs.
And I know it's appreciated very much by staff. I know that people from other districts in previous years would say they'd get a tiny little raise, but it got eaten up in the benefit increase. And I think this board recognizing that, and this the previous boards and this board continuing that means a lot to the employees. And I think it's also adds to our recruitment and retention efforts, and something that I think we need to accentuate when we're attracting new employees or retaining them, making people aware that that increase in benefits was picked up by the board, by the district.
Absolutely. Okay, well, could we click forward a couple slides? I had, I think, one question on the grants.
Keep going, keep going, keep going. on the grants.
Also, I appreciate again the explanation between operating and operational, because that's always a challenge, but it was incredibly clear in this. Okay, so these all, and it's always interesting to see how much we depend on grants. And these, as you said, Dr. Garcia, will be budgeted as they come in, because some of them are still pending. And I think it was the city county grant line, which is on the next slide, that caught my attention, because that's one that we may, which is 4 FTE and more than $500,000, the second from the last. And that, any insights or wisdom, Dr. Garcia, on what might happen with city and county grants?
So, well, I mean, I think the county, from what I can gather, is in a little bit different financial position, but I think that a good portion of the city and county grants are broken up into tiny FTEs, and can have a significant impact depending on where they're spread out. It's hard to tell. We picked up the crossing guards. Part of that is in there, right, Mr. Martinez? Not all of it, but a good chunk of it is in there. And so we'll see. It doesn't look good. Let's just put it that way. I don't think it looks that good. And when we compute cash balance, it's not on the operating, it's on the operational.
Right. Okay. All right. Any other questions, comments from the board? Let's click through a little more, because it was fast but simple. There's the debt, the capital outlay. Okay.
And of course, you went over this last week, or was it last week? 2 weeks ago?
I think it was 2 weeks ago. And keep going if you would, please. So yeah, this is so these are allowed under SB 9 and HB 33, the fiscal impacts of the pandemic that we're putting them.
And we didn't put it all. I mean, we couldn't take it all from here, but we did a good chunk in the Cares Act also. But yes, these are allowable. But the reason that we wanted to highlight it is that some maintenance would be deferred, possibly, to help meet these needs, right? These are immediate needs that the operational budget cannot withstand.
Yeah. And $1.7 million of estimated cost for school year 2021 is not a small number, but there we have it. Okay, well, I don't have any further questions. Does anyone else? Should we click through the last couple slides? There's the debt service. And keep going, please. There's the drum roll as we get to the end. Other people are hearing that too, right?
I hear it. I hear it. I feel like someone should bring me pink and all of us pink and blue balloons for the children.
There we go.
For after this.
Yeah. Okay. And so this adds up to the total operating budget, which is great.
Going to the next slide, to the end, you can see the top. There you go.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate this slide a lot, including the retro font. Okay. Questions, other comments from the board? Should we move on to the action items? Any, this is good. Any, we're gonna stay flexible. Dr. Garcia, you've I think led the team in some extraordinary work, and
they've worked really hard.
We so appreciate all of the blood, sweat, tears, hours, whatever else has gone into smoothing this presentation together, and the thinking that its simplicity underlies. So it's really great. How are we feeling, board members? Are we ready to approve the budget? And if so, maybe we should have a motion.
Madam President, this is Rudy.
Hi.
Hi. Been listening to you guys. Hopefully everything's well. Just really quick, I'd actually like to thank staff, Dr. Garcia, and all of your staff for putting together this budget during this time. I think it's good to be part of Santa Fe Public Schools. We actually have a great master plan for great assessor and great I'd like to make a motion for approval.
This is Sarah. I'll second that.
Okay, great. Any further discussion? All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Let's start this time with you, Board Member Bose.
I vote yes.
Dr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Secretary Garcia, Vice President Price,
Yes.
and the President votes yes. Thank you very much, and congratulations to everyone. We have an initial operating budget for the 2020 school year, 2021 school year.
Thank you so much, Madam President, members of the board. Your guidance and helping us with this has been immensely helpful. And again, I appreciate you saying initial budget, because this will continue to change. I mean, I have no doubt. As we stated when we first started, that we're partly working in the blind, and that we don't know what the impacts of the legislative session will be. One big missing piece was the Cares Act. And again, that proposal has to be approved by the board. By the Public Ed Department. And so we may be coming back depending on the feedback we get from the PED. But I thank you for your flexibility and your understanding and your leadership and support of the team and me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Okay, moving on to advanced planning. I believe this means that we do not need to meet on this Thursday, May 28th.
Correct. So we would just cancel that. We do have, though, budget adjustment requests on consent and contracts.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So we're not on advanced planning. We're on the consent agenda. Any questions or comments? And if not, could we have a motion?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you.
This is Sarah. I second.
Thank you very much. We'll start with any further discussion. We'll start with you this time, Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
Secretary Garcia.
Yes.
Vice President Price.
Yes.
Board Member Bose.
Yes.
And the President votes yes. We've approved the consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So now we move on to advanced planning. So we would cancel the special board meeting set tentatively for Thursday, May 28th. And we would come together again a week from today, tentatively for an executive session, and certainly for a regular meeting at 5:30. Any changes, Dr. Garcia, other than that?
No, Madam President. So the only thing I see is just canceling. We don't need it, the May 28th meeting.
Okay. And I don't think we need.
So that's June the 2nd, right?
That's correct. Our next meeting would be June the 2nd, and we may have an executive session at 4:30. We will certainly have a regular session at 5:30.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Anything else on advanced planning? Any other comments? Parting thoughts? Well, thank you very much, everybody. I just want to say, I know there were a bunch of technical difficulties for whatever reason, and it's partly that we had, I think, the earliest meeting we've ever had on the first working day after a long weekend. So it's sort of bound to be that way. But thank you to everyone for hanging in there and for your patience and muscling through.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, we are adjourned. Bye-bye.
Good luck,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.